Muichiro Tokito is a Demon Slayer prodigy. He is the youngest known Hashira in history, and he has a secret family connection to the strongest demon moon, upper rank 1 Kokushibo. By the end of this video, you will learn everything you need to know about Muichiro's tragic backstory, his incredible powers and abilities, and his shocking connection to both the strongest demon moon and the strongest demon slayer. The missed Hashira Muichiro Tokito is only 14 years old when we first meet him in the story. That means that he's actually a few years younger than Tanjiro, and yet he's already a Hashira. But despite his unbelievable talent and incredible family lineage, Muichiro had a very unremarkable childhood. He grew up in the woods in the middle of nowhere with a twin brother named Yuichiro. The two boys were the sons of a humble woodcutter and his wife. At the age of 10, the boys tragically lost their mother to pneumonia, and then they lost their father too around the same time. He had gone out to pick medicinal herbs for their sick mother during a storm, and he slipped and fell off a cliff. So the two 10-year-old twins suddenly found themselves living alone as orphans deep in the woods in the middle of nowhere. Yuichiro was the older brother, and after the tragic passing of their parents, he developed a very cynical outlook on life. He thought that their father was a fool for going out in a storm just to try to save their mother's life. She was already too far gone for some herbs to save her, and had their father just stayed home that night, then only their mother would have died instead of both of them. Muichiro was more compassionate and sentimental, and he disagreed with his brother's grim outlook on life. The following year, when the brothers were around 11, Oyakata-sama's wife came to visit them at their home. She told them that they were descendants of legendary swordsmen, and that their ancestor was the original user of the Breath of the Sun. She wanted the two of them to become demon slayers, but Yuichiro turned her away. He had no intention of risking his life or the life of his brother just to help complete strangers. Because if they were foolish enough to do that, then they would end up just like their father. Yuichiro believed that the Demon Slayers just wanted to use him and his brother for their own selfish ends, and he didn't trust the Demon Slayer Corps. Truth be told, he didn't really trust anyone, and he refused to carelessly throw away his own life for someone else's sake. Then one night, a demon found their home and attacked them. Yuichiro was gravely injured by the demon attack, and after witnessing this, something snapped inside Muichiro. He used his woodcutting axes and every other tool at his disposal to cut the demon up and crush parts of his body with heavy rocks, pinning him down until the sun came up and killed him. When he finally returned to the house, Muichiro found his brother praying to the gods and Buddhas to spare Muichiro's life because, unlike Yuichiro, Muichiro has a kind heart and he wants to help others. Yuichiro regretted that he prevented his brother from helping other people, because his brother was special and kind, and he wanted to fight for the good of others. Unfortunately, Yuichiro's wounds were too severe, and soon after he died in his brother's arms. When Oyakata-sama's wife returned once again to the Tokito family home, she was able to heal Muichiro and save his life. Muichiro then joined the Demon Slayer Corps, and he decided to fight to save others from the demons. But the trauma that he experienced blocked out most memories of his former life. As a result of his prestigious lineage and incredible natural talent, Muichiro speedran the Demon Slayer ranks, and he became a Hashira only 2 months after joining up. Like, that is just freaking insane. I mean, yes, Muichiro was blessed with a legendary bloodline and extraordinary natural talent, but that still seems insanely fast. Anyway, due in part to the trauma and memory loss that Muichiro experienced after the tragic death of his brother, Muichiro's personality began to resemble that of his older brother Yuichiro instead of his own usual compassionate and idealistic self. Muichiro became more cold and indifferent, much like Yuichiro used to be. He also felt a deep-seated anger towards the demons, and this is what drove him to keep surpassing his limits and all possible expectations in order to destroy as many demons as possible. When we first meet Muichiro in the story, his personality is much closer to Yuichiro's than to his own, which is why he initially comes off as such a cold and blunt person. Quick warning, right now I'm gonna start talking about Muichiro's many powers and abilities. And in order to do that properly, I have to spoil some elements of the Swordsmith Village arc and beyond. Please proceed with caution, you have been warned. In terms of power, it should already be clear by now that Muichiro is an absolute prodigy and a once-in-a-lifetime talent. It only took him 2 months of training to become a Hashira at such a young age, even though before this, he never even practiced with a sword, so the natural talent is just off the wall. Muichiro unlocks his Demon Slayer mark during the Swordsmith Village arc, and after that, he is able to defeat and kill Upper Moon 5 Gyokko on his own. The vast majority of Upper Moon fights are team battles with multiple Hashira and or Demon Slayers engaging the demon all at once. But Muichiro just solos Upper Moon 5, which again speaks to how special he is. Eventually, Muichiro also gains access to the transparent world and his Nichiren blade turns bright red. He goes on to play a crucial role in ultimately defeating Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo, who is of course a direct ancestor of Muichiro. During that fight, it is revealed that Muichiro is a descendant of Kokushibo through his children, the children that Kokushibo abandoned once he decided to join the Demon Slayer Corps. And even though the family's surname changed over the centuries, Kokushibo abandoned his children something like 450 years ago, so it's been quite a while. Kokushibo can still sense that Muichiro Tokito is a descendant of his own Tsugikuni family. Muichiro is like the great grandson of Michikatsu Tsugikuni, also known as Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo. And I'll be honest, I have no idea just how many greats I needed to include there, so I'm just winging it. The fact that Muichiro is a direct descendant of Kokushibo means that he is also directly related to Kokushibo's twin brother Yoriichi, the strongest demon slayer in history. And I guess that makes sense when you think about it. The only person in the story with more natural talent than Muichiro is Yoriichi, so the fact that they are descended from the same bloodline isn't too much of a surprise. During their fight, Kokushibo notices the extent of Muichiro's skill and talent, and he is proud of his descendant, and he even wishes for his descendant to become a demon so that he would have all of eternity to keep getting stronger. As expected, Muichiro's senses, reflexes, speed, strength, endurance, and stamina are at the highest of levels. And on top of that, he is of course a master swordsman who uses mist breathing to destroy his opponents. Mist breathing is a derivative of wind breathing, and it mimics the properties of mist. It has 7 known forms, including first form Low Clouds Distant Haze, which is a thrusting attack. Second form 8-layered Mist, which involves a barrage of 8 slashes, one on top of the other. Third form Scattering Mist Splash, a circular slash with the power to blow away enemy projectiles. Fourth form Shifting Flow Slash, which includes a rapid slash right as the sword is pulled from its scabbard. Fifth form Sea of Clouds and Haze, which involves the user running at the enemy at high speed and following through with a barrage of slashes. Sixth form Lunar Dispersing Mist, which involves the user leaping into the air and raining down a large number of slashes on his enemies. And finally, 7th form, Obscuring Clouds, which is a technique that allows the user to confuse his enemies by shifting the tempo of his movements in a way that tricks the opponent's eyes. This form was created by Muichiro himself. And yet another spoiler alert. In the rest of the video, I will be discussing what ultimately happens with Muichiro in the final arcs of the Demon Slayer story. So if that is something you don't want to find out right now, I am giving you another fair warning. In order to fully explain the true nature of Muichiro's character, I really have to talk about his entire character arc. So major spoilers ahead. Okay, now that everyone who doesn't want to know the ultimate fate of Muichiro is presumably gone, let's talk about the final fight that we see him participating in, the fight against Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo, which along with Muichiro also includes Genya, Sanemi, and Gyomei. Muichiro is actually the first to meet Kokushibo, and as soon as he sees Upper Moon 1, Muichiro can tell right away that he is different from all the other demon moons. Kokushibo has a magnificent and majestic presence, and he is clearly a master swordsman, which leads Muichiro to conclude that Kokushibo was once a demon slayer. Upper Moon 1's aura is so intimidating that Muichiro's body shakes and he feels like his body is refusing to fight, which is something that he's never experienced before. Kokushibo then casually asks for the young Hashira's name. Muichiro identifies himself, and Kokushibo responds by saying his own human name was Michikatsu Tsugikuni. Even though their family names are different, Kokushibo can tell that Muichiro is a direct descendant of his own child, and therefore a direct descendant of him as well. Muichiro is surprised to hear this, but nonetheless, he summons up the courage and strength to calm his nerves and prepare for battle. So much so that Kokushibo praises his spiritual strength and ability to calm himself so quickly. Muichiro then starts his attack on Kokushibo using mist breathing, but at first he's unable to land a hit. Even so, Kokushibo is impressed by Muichiro's strength and courage, especially since he can tell that Muichiro is still only a 14-year-old at this point in the story. Kokushibo also notices that the Demon Slayer mark has now appeared on Muichiro's face, and as Muichiro continues to use impressive techniques against the demon, Kokushibo concludes that it would be rude if he didn't draw his own sword. And so, Kokushibo unleashes his own breathing style, moon breathing. The very first swing of Kokushibo's moon breathing slices off Muichiro's left hand. And Muichiro is stunned to learn that Kokushibo can use a breathing technique even after becoming a demon. Muichiro quickly makes a tourniquet from his shirt and just keeps on fighting, almost like nothing happened. This is an absolutely mind-boggling level of discipline, strength, and courage. He loses an arm, he instantly acts to stop the bleeding, and then he just keeps fighting. This is why Muichiro became a Hashira at such a young age. Age aside, he is a magnificent warrior through and through. Kokushibo is so moved by the strength and determination of his descendant that he doesn't even want to kill him anymore. Instead, he says that he will ask Muzan to turn Muichiro into a demon. That is when Genya shows up and enters the fray. He attempts to sneak up on Kokushibo and shoot him from behind, but the demon easily spots him and uses his unbelievable speed to just slice Genya up into pieces. However, to Kokushibo's surprise, Genya is still alive, and before he can finish Genya off, the demon is then also attacked by the Wind Hashira, Sanemi. Sanemi vows to make Kokushibo pay for slicing up his little brother. And after Kokushibo draws his sword, we witness a fierce battle between wind breathing and moon breathing. After a while, the strongest Hashira of this entire generation, the stone Hashira Gyome Himejima, also joins the fight. And so the final showdown between 3 Hashira and Genya versus Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo really gets going. While the fight between moon breathing and stone breathing rages, the unbelievable Wonder Kid Muichiro, who up to this point had been pinned down after being pierced by a sword, pulls the sword out of his own chest with his bare hands. Just imagine what kind of unfathomable strength and stamina it takes for a 14-year-old kid to be able to push through so much pain just to free himself and keep fighting. Muichiro knows that he is dying from blood loss, but he is determined to do something useful in this important battle before he departs this world. So he does his best to wrap his wounds and stop the bleeding, and then he helps Genya put his own mangled body back together. Although both Genya and Muichiro are gravely injured, they vow to keep fighting until the very end, showing just what absolute mad lads they both are. Genya then consumes some of Kokushibo's hair, and eventually some of his sword, and as Genya and Muichiro are trying to pick themselves up from the ground and rejoin the fight, Gyome and Sanemi are tag teaming Kokushibo in a desperate attempt to take his head and defeat him. Muichiro finally rejoins the fray when he steps in to save Sanemi from one of Kokushibo's attacks. And then, determined to help while he is still able to move, Muichiro attacks Kokushibo. While Kokushibo is distracted by attacks from Gyome and Sanemi, Muichiro manages to move close enough to pierce Kokushibo's torso with his sword. Muichiro loses one of his legs in the process, but as expected from this kid, he doesn't even care. He has completely accepted death, and all he wants to do now is be as useful as possible before he dies. In these moments, Muichiro shows more courage and strength than even the strongest of fully grown adult warriors. And he deserves all the respect for how valiantly he behaves during this fight despite his young age. Ultimately, Muichiro makes the decision to protect Gyomei and Sanemi at all costs so that they will survive and be able to contribute to the final battle against Muzan. He is so determined to help defeat Kokushibo before he dies that his Nichiren blade turns bright red. And this newly transformed blade causes such pain to Kokushibo that he is actually paralyzed. On top of that, a dying Genya uses his blood demon art to manifest a tree around Kokushibo, helping to keep him immobile long enough for Sanemi and Gyomei to take his head. At first, it looks like Kokushibo's power is so great that even losing his head to a Nichiren blade cannot defeat him. To everyone's absolute shock and terror, he is able to regenerate even his head. But this second head looks nothing like a human head. It is a monstrous demonic head, and when Kokushibo catches a glimpse of his own face, he is disgusted. He can't believe that he allowed his fear of defeat to take away his humanity and turn him into such a monster. So, as Kokushibo is having this massive crisis of conscience, his body begins to break apart in the very place that Muichiro had stabbed him. He is then finished off by Gyomei and Sanemi, and thus Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo falls in battle. Genya and Muichiro both die from the wounds that they sustained during this grueling battle. And as Muichiro's life leaves his body, Gyomei thanks him from the bottom of his heart, because it is thanks to Muichiro that they were able to defeat Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo. Gyomei says that for someone so young, Muichiro was magnificent to the very end, and he vows to defeat Muzan before telling Muichiro that he can now rest in peace. As he leaves this life for the next, Muichiro meets his twin brother Yuichiro once again. A crying Yuichiro asks his brother why he chose to die fighting at such a young age when he could have run away and lived a long life. But Muichiro says that he could never abandon his comrades. He was happy when he was with his friends and comrades. He had good times with them, and thanks to them, he was able to smile again. Crying, the two brothers embrace each other, and that is how Muichiro's life ends. This particular life. In the end, Muichiro didn't live up to the expectations of his ancestor Kokushibo because he refused to become a demon like him. But he definitely did live up to the legacy of his other ancestor, Kokushibo's twin brother Yoriichi Tsugikuni. Yoriichi also refused to become a demon, and he lived and fought honorably and valiantly until the very end, just like Muichiro. We can say with confidence that without the unparalleled courage, strength, and determination of Muichiro, Kokushibo would not have been defeated. And if Kokushibo had survived, it's likely that Muzan would never have been defeated at all. The remaining Demon Slayers gave everything they had in the final fight against Muzan. And if at that time Muzan had backup from a still living Kokushibo, the Demon Slayers would have lost and Muzan would have won. Put simply, the final and most important battle of the entire series, the showdown with Muzan, would have almost certainly ended in failure if not for the noble sacrifice made by the missed Hashira Muichiro Tokito. What did you guys think of this once-in-a-lifetime talent, the Wonder Kid Muichiro Tokito, and his tragic sacrifice? Who is your favorite Hashira of all time, and where does Muichiro rank on that list? If you're looking for another epic Demon Slayer video to watch right now, don't miss my full-length video on Muichiro's ancestor and the strongest Demon Slayer in history, Yoriichi, link in the description and on screen. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Demon Slayer content in the future, leave a quick like right now. And if you are one of the over 50% of people who watch our videos but still haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, do me a big favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications.